Hey guys, what's going on? My name's Ezrado, and today I'm going to show you how to create a piano tutorial. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you may know this is something that I already did a while ago, but a few things have changed since then, just a few pieces of software and changes to that software. So I decided to redo the video, and also I think I have a better recording setup now. I have an actual desktop, so my computer's not going to lag. Anyway, you don't care about that stuff, you just want to get to the tutorial, so I'm going to show you that right away. So first thing you want to think about is whether you want to go with the free method or the paid method. Now, you can go with either, and you can do half free, half paid. It really just depends how good you want your piano tutorial to look and sound. Now, I'm going to leave a little slide just coming up in a moment saying which software to use for both methods, and you can kind of pick and choose, which ones you want to pay for, which ones you want for free. It's kind of really up to you. Obviously, I would highly recommend going all paid because it's going to look a lot better. But if you don't care, then that's fine. And you'll see the result of what each, free and pay bit of software does, so you can make a decision. Anyway, here's what you're going to need. Okay, so with that out of the way, I'm going to show you how to use FL Studio firstly, and then I'm going to show you how to use Cakewalk. So FL Studio is the paid method. It used to, and this is one of the things that's changed since my last tutorial, it used to be something you could use for free. You could just get a trial, and that would be enough to create a piano tutorial because it was time unlimited. There were just program restrictions, and that was all it was, whereas now it is time limited, and that's really not ideal if this is something you want to keep doing. I mean, maybe like if you're making a one-off tutorial, fine, but if it's something you want to keep doing, then it is something you have to pay for. However, it's a cheap DAW. It's, I think, the cheapest DAW. I could be wrong on that. At least the cheapest, famous, well-known big DAW, cheap, popular DAW, I should say. So yeah. This is the DAW I use for all of my music. I would highly recommend it. It's my favorite DAW. Obviously, there's no right or wrong. It's just personal preference. But yeah, it's the one I use. So this is the one I'm going to show you firstly. Anyway, okay, so when you first open up FL Studio, the first thing you should see is actually a demo project. So not like what I'm seeing here now, but actually a pre-made project. It's something that happens every time you update FL Studio or download it for the first time. So basically to create a new project, as you would expect, you go up to File, then you can go New from Template. I would go Minimal and then Empty. Just a word of advice, every time you every time you open an FL Studio project after that, after the first time, it should come up by default with what you just saw before, which was a kick, a snare, a hat, and a clap, I believe. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, basically what you just saw before. It doesn't really matter if that's the case. You can just use that project, but otherwise, yeah, up here, New from Template, and then go Empty, and then you just end up with this little thing with just a sampler, which makes life a little bit easier. Not really a huge difference, but it doesn't really matter too much. Okay, so first things first that you might want to do is add a piano plugin. Now, FL Studio comes with its own native piano plugins that you can use. It really comes down to personal preference as to how good you want your piano to sound. Because you're only going to get it to be so good with FL's native plugins. Like, they have a few okay ones. I would advise not using FL Keys, which is sort of their main VST, which you'll find here. I would recommend using another one of theirs. You can do so either by going up here, by the way, to add. So this is where you add basically all of the plugins that you use to create sounds. So you have your FL Keys here, so that's like a piano plugin. If I add that, you'll see this is like a piano plugin with piano input. If I'm playing it like there, like that, I think I'm getting audio nice. Just had some issues before with the last recording. So that's okay. You have a few options, either piano or grand piano. These last two you're probably not going to be using for a piano tutorial, but otherwise you can also use Flex, which is probably the best option at the moment as I'm recording this, unless they release something Flex isn't just for pianos, but it does have a piano library, which they call Essential Pianos. The best one in that, I think, is probably Steinway D. You know, it's probably the most realistic. Otherwise, you have some sort of different pianos of certain styles, which you might want maybe if you're doing, I don't know, like a tutorial from of some music from Westworld. Well, there's your Westworld piano, you know. Yeah, it's yeah. So you can use the Steinway there. That's what I'd probably recommend for that one. Otherwise, you can also go into instruments here. This is a different way of adding a plugin, obviously. Just under packs, then instruments, and then you go keyboard. There's a few options here. I haven't really tested them extensively, but I would say close ground is probably your best bet here. It's just going to open up direct wave. You know, so that's actually not too bad. But even still, like, I would say you can get better pianos if you're willing to pay. Or download free ones as well. There are some good free ones, and I did leave a link in the description for a list of free piano plugins, so do have a look at that. Otherwise, if you're willing to pay, the ones I would personally recommend, for a cheaper option, I would use one called Addictive Keys, which I don't think I've downloaded. I do have it, but I recently updated my computer. I haven't got the chance, haven't gotten around to re-downloading it again, but that's a good one. It has several different pianos within it. So you can really choose the taste, which one you want. Otherwise, the one, you know, I'll leave a link in the description, by the way, for that, if you're interested, as well as the ones that I use, which are Play. This actually isn't the piano plugin itself. This is sort of the sampler, but the actual, you can get packs within this sort of, this company, East West Quantum Leap. They basically make a lot of different instruments, and you can get several pianos, one of which is a Steinway, another which is a Yamaha, and they do several others, but these are the ones I use. So this here, East West Quantum Leap, they do what you would say is like a subscription, so you can pay a certain amount per month to get access to all of their instruments, and that includes, if you want to download it, their pianos. And this, to my knowledge, is probably the best sounding piano money can buy. I mean, I probably need to look a bit more, but I would say of all the ones I've tried, of all the ones I've heard, this one is amazing. I really love it. So this has my full recommendation. You just go here and add it, obviously. Yeah, you can buy it outright. I believe, I could be wrong unless they've updated that, but I would say probably the best way to go is the subscription, because it's not too much. I can't remember the exact price, but again, links in the description so you can check it out for yourself. So yeah, you know, you have control over things like the reverb here. I'm not going to go too much into this because you might not even be using this, so it's not super relevant. But otherwise, you got the Yamaha, which is a less grand sounding piano, whereas the Steinway D is a real grand, you know, Steinway, as the Steinways have reputations for. So that's that. You can use that. You know, that's a really nice, really, I don't know if that. I don't know. I don't really know music theory, so I do everything by ear. So I often hit wrong notes. I can't really improvise. But anyway, that's basically what it sounds like. Then what else we got? We got Contact. Is the other one I use. You can buy this one in a pack. I don't think they have subscriptions, but you can, I believe. Well, I bought this one outright. Within a pack, like I think it was Contact 12 or something like that, Contact 11, I can't remember the number, but this is another one. I would say, I actually prefer Play, but this one is also a grand sound, you know, it's a grand piano, hence the name. What I do is layer both of these at the same time, so Play and Contact. Anyway, before I go on, I'd actually like to show you how to add third-party piano plugins. If you don't want to use FL Studio's native one, you do want to download either a free one or a paid one from the internet. The way you do that is by downloading, or at least moving the file of the plugin that you've downloaded to one of these folders. So these here are the folders that FL Studio scans when it's looking for new plugins to add to its library. So basically you just want to make sure that the thing that you downloaded is within one of these folders. Specifically, you want to make sure that the DLL file is within one of these folders. So that is the file with the extension .dll. You want to put that in one of these folders, and preferably everything that goes with it, because otherwise FL Studio is not going to be able to find it. I mean, yeah, as far as putting the rest of it in it, you know, if there's some documentation, it might not need it, but if there's some other stuff, you may as well just put everything in the folder within one of these folders. So say, for instance, you download a piano plugin and it comes in a zip folder. What you would do then is unzip it and then take all of the contents of that folder within that folder that you downloaded and put it into one of these folders. And that should include the .dll file. So any file that says .dll, as you can see here, these are all .dll files. That's what the actual plugin file is. So that's what it needs to search for. Hope that makes sense. Once you've done that, then you can hit this button that says Find More Plugins, and I'm not going to click because I don't want it to scan, but once you do that, it'll scan for plugins, and then any new plugin that comes up will be shown in yellow here. Should be, at least. If not, you should at least see the name, but I don't see why it wouldn't show up in yellow. Yeah, so, and that's how you know that it's found the plugin. So if that works, you're good to go. Once you've done that, then you can find that plugin that you just downloaded at first within the plugin database. So to do that, that's just on this sidebar here. By the way, if you don't see this, which you should, but if you don't, you can toggle this view here just with this button here. Same goes for everything in FL Studio. You got the mixer here, the channel rack there, playlist there, piano roll there. So you really, all your essential things for toggling windows are right up here, which makes things super easy. But anyway, first time you download a piano plugin, or any plugin really, you should see it in the plugin database. So this should be under installed at first, and then it should be, well, always, I think, it should be under generators because it's not an effect. It's, you know, you're generating sound, not adding effects to sound. And then it should be under new. And then here we go. I don't know why Contact's here because I downloaded it ages ago, but that's listed as a new one. So then for the first time, when you're using this for the first time, then all you have to do is drag that onto the channel rack. And remember, if you don't see your channel rack, which you should, but if you don't, it's this button here to toggle it on and off. Not on and off, but, you know, to show it. So then you can drag it onto the channel rack anywhere. If you drag it onto an existing thing, like say you had the previous project loaded up that I was talking about with a kick, snare, clap, and hat, then you can drag it over the top of one of those if you want, or you can drag it underneath. If you drag it on top, it'll replace the track. So if I'm replacing Contact, you know, I just replace it with the same thing there, but you can see that would have replaced that. Whereas if I add, you know, put it underneath, it's adding another instance of Contact. So I don't need to do that, but that's how you do it. By the way, if you want to delete a track, it's pretty easy. Just right click, delete. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to delete both of those for now because I want to show you how I use my workflow. So before we actually get into the piano roll and how to create your actual tutorial, I want to show you how to connect a MIDI keyboard. Super simple in FL Studio, and I think it is in most programs, but you want to go options up here, then you want to go MIDI settings because it's a MIDI device. My thing's already plugged in. I will show you what it looks like if I unplug it and then re-plug it in. Okay, so now you can see that it's not showing anymore because I just unplugged it. So then you plug it in basically, you know, into your USB port. Okay. Now, sometimes I've noticed with FL Studio, it does a weird thing where it won't show up. Sometimes it's a little finicky. For some reason, I don't really know why. But right now, you can see I plugged it in and it's not showing up. So if that happens, just do this a few times, basically. I'm going to do it again, and I know it'll eventually show up because this often happens. Okay, so I had to plug it in and out quite a few times there, but it showed up eventually. Maybe that was like 4 plugs and unplugs. I don't know if that's just my MIDI keyboard or if that's the case with a lot of others, but for me, that's something that often happens. Anyway, once you've found it on this list, all you really have to do is click it on the input here and make sure that this box or this circle here is in green. So you want to make sure it's enabled. And that's pretty much it. I think if you're still not finding you're getting any input after this step, maybe you can play around with the ports. Just select a number on here by dragging it up, select a number on there by dragging it up, and make sure it's the same number. I don't think you really have to do that anymore. I think that was something in the past, if at all. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You should be seeing your MIDI keyboard. By the way, you don't need a MIDI keyboard. This is an optional step. I recommend it because I think it makes life easier, but this is only if you have a MIDI device. So yeah, it's not like the end of the world if you don't want to use MIDI. So okay, so now we've got that. We've got our play and we've got our input. I can play piano, by the way. I just can't improvise. So yeah, we've got our instance of a piano plugin. In my case, East West Quantum Leap's Play. So now we actually want to create a piano tutorial. So the way we do that is by going into the piano roll. Now there are 2 ways of doing this. You can either use this button here, which toggles the piano roll on and off, which I did show you earlier, or you can right-click on the plugin that you want to create a tutorial from and just hit piano roll, and that also opens it. So the benefit of right-clicking is if you have like a lot of different plugins and you just press that button, well, it's just going to open whichever one's selected, so you can select them via this button here. And by the way, this is also how you play, so if you want to play this plugin, then you make sure that's selected next to that plugin. And what do you know, my piano's turned off. Bear with me for a second. So as you can see, it's playing that because that's selected. If I select sampler, well, it's not really going to play anything because sampler really isn't an instrument, but if it was an instrument, it would play that instrument. Cool. So yeah, you can play around with just this plugin if you want. You can play like a full piece. I don't know, like. Yeah, there you go. There's Girl from Ipanema. So yeah, you can do that. You can create an entire tutorial just within one of these instances if you want. And at first, that's actually what I'm going to do. So there are 2 ways of doing this. Once again, you can either just play on your MIDI keyboard if you have one and create a tutorial that way. If you're classically trained and can just do that, great. And you can just get it perfect first go, fine, go for it. So the way you want to do that then is by hitting this record button here, and I would say hit the press the Alt button on your keyboard and then click the record button, and then this little window should pop up, and you want to go notes and automation. If you go audio, that's like for recording audio from a microphone or something, but you just want to record the information that you're putting in on the MIDI keyboard. So for that purpose, then you want to go notes and automation. And now it's set to do that. So all you have to do, making sure this is set to red, by the way, I mean, once you select the thing on the menu, it should have been by that point. Then you want to hit spacebar on your keyboard. And you can see it's counting me down. Now, anything that I do on my MIDI keyboard, if I play, I don't know, what's something I can play. Anyway, that's my kind of crappy cover of Lone Digger by Caravan Palace, but I think it's an octave higher, but my microphone's in the way, so I can't play that high at the moment. Anyway, as you can see, it's put in all of the data I just played. Now, there is a reason why you might not want to do everything this way and just do this, and that's because chances are, unless you're like just the most perfect piano player, you're probably not going to have everything aligned to the grid. You're probably, going to have things out of grid. And by the way, this is something that I should mention. I should have mentioned this at the start. Before you actually do this, you want to set your tempo up here. So this little box up here at the top of the screen. This is where you set the tempo of your overall project. So for whatever piano tutorial that you're creating, you want to find out what the tempo is. And, I'm not going to show you how to do that because I'm sure you can figure it out. And I would say either go to Beatport if it's on Beatport. If it's not an electronic song, which chances are it's probably not, then you can just search the song title on Google and BPM, and there's bound to be a site somewhere that shows you it. They're not always 100% accurate, but if you just look at a few to make sure they're all saying the same thing, then it should be right. So once you've found that, then you can set the BPM here. So let's say it's 100 BPM. What this is going to do is change everything in the project. So the tempo of everything in the project, So it'll change everything in the piano roll. If you have stuff on the playlist, which I'm not going to show you right now, then it'll change the tempo of that. Basically, this whole grid, the speed at which the playhead runs through the grid, that will either go slower or faster depending on what you change the BPM to. So now I've changed this to 100 beats per minute. You can play back what I just played on the piano a lot faster, but now it'll go a lot slower. Pretty cool, huh? So that's kind of neat. So that's how you do it if you want to use a MIDI keyboard. What I tend to do is a mix, so I won't record myself playing usually unless I want a really organic kind of authentic sound, and I probably should do that more. But I actually plot in the notes like this. So you can click on the grid and do that, and I'll show you how to do that in more depth in a moment. But if you do use a MIDI keyboard, the other thing you can do is, once you've played it, say you do want to record it, which I also recommend because you do get kind of realistic dynamics if you are playing it. Then afterwards, if you're out of time, you can just drag the notes into time. So I'm a bit off grid here, so I probably want that to be in the middle, so I can drag like so. Now, I'll talk about that now. I think it's probably the best time. So when you're using the grid, not using the MIDI keyboard to input notes, the way you move notes around is by basically just clicking and dragging like so. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? If you want to put a new note in, say you're not using a MIDI keyboard and you just want to create notes from scratch, you can add them just by clicking anywhere on the grid. And then again, you can drag to change their position. If you want to change the length of a note, pretty simple too. Just grab to the end of it and you can change note. That's wrong, so that's a bad example. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. Changing dynamics, as I alluded to before, these little bars at the bottom here control the velocity of the notes, which is a fancy way of saying the volume basically, but not necessarily, because if you're using like a good piano plugin, it won't just be the volume of it that it changes. So say if you go really down low, that should be a low volume, and if you go up high, that's a really high volume. But it's not just the volume, and that's probably not the best way of thinking of it, because if you have a good plugin, like a good realistic piano plugin, it won't just change the volume of it, but also change the dynamic. So the real, up here you really notice it's not just louder, it's also a lot sharper, whereas down here, it's very muted, that note here, I'm changing the F. So yeah, that's the difference. Not all plugins will do this. If you have a cheaper one or a free one, it might just change the volume and that might be it. But if you have a realistic one like Play, it should be changing something like this. And that's why when you're playing, right, it'll add all this automatically based on how hard you press on the keys. So that's why I say it's good to be, using a MIDI keyboard, because then you get realistic playing. And then what you can do afterwards is, if you are out of time, then you can change the position of these notes by dragging them. Also, pro tip that you should definitely know, if you want to, this is obviously snapping to the grid, right? When I move it, it's just going from there to there, right? If you want it to go in between though, you can hold down Alt on your keyboard and move it like that, and then that'll go in between. So that's a cool tip. Okay, so other than that, another thing that I definitely use a lot, because most songs aren't through composed, they do tend to repeat chords and such. If you want to repeat like a chord, say, I don't know, say you put your chord out, you got your chord there, then you want to repeat that chord, say that goes a few times, like, I don't know, you got a few chords there. then you can select by either going up to this button, but don't do that because that takes extra time. If you're, by the way, this should be the default function you're on. You can use these two, but make sure that's selected. If you're on this, then it'll do a painting effect. So when you drag, then it paints it, which we don't want. We want to, I mean, you might, but I don't really think that's of much use when you're creating a piano tutorial. I think the pencil option is better. What was it? Where was I saying? Oh, yeah, right. To select, you can go here and just drag over the top, but that takes extra time. What I would do is on any mode, I think on any mode, if you go control, yeah, on any mode, preferably on pencil, then you can toggle that function, and then the moment you release the control, then it's back to the normal function. Now you've selected. So say, as I was saying before, you want to repeat this chord. Well, what you want to do then is just hold the shift button, press on this, and then drag. And now we have a duplicate of this, and you can do this as many times as you want. Click, drag, click, drag, click, drag, like so. If you can't be bothered clicking and dragging after you've selected, you can also go Control C on the keyboard and Control V, and that actually moved it to there, but you know, it copied all of those notes. So you can do it both ways. I would recommend doing the shift option most of the time, and then, you know, once you have more, then you can do that for all of them. So you can quickly get a lot of chords. That makes things super easy. I know this might not seem immediately like something you use, but it's, trust me, you will. So yeah, that's how you do that. And by the way, also for deleting notes, if you want to delete a note, also pretty simple. Just hold down the right mouse button, then that'll turn it into this this little icon here, which you can also access by doing that. But again, why do that when you just press the right mouse button and drag over the note, or just click on the note with the right click? And by the way, I'm undoing with Control-Alt-Z, so pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is these grid lines. So basically, each number you see on this grid is a representative of one bar. And then within each bar, then you have 4 beats. So it's basically like a 4/4 time signature, you know, 4 crotchet beats to the bar. So each one of these columns or rows, or I think it's, I always forget which is horizontal and which is vertical. I think is column. Each one of these square columns, let's just say, I'm sorry if it is a row, represents 1 crotchet beat. So as you can see, if I hit play, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's like 4 crotchet beats. Until we get to here, then that's the next bar, 4 crotchet beats more. So that's how you work it out. If you want to, you know, say you've played something on your MIDI keyboard, but it's not in time, this is how you work it out. So, you know, you want something to start on the second beat, it's probably going to be this, I guess. Yeah, so it'd be like 1, 2. Yeah, and then, you know, that one's halfway through the beat because that's like a quaver, so that's that'd be like a quaver, you know. These are music theory terms I'm using, obviously. If you haven't really done that, don't worry. It's pretty logical. You don't really have to understand music theory to understand how this works. It's really just simple. That represents 1 beat. Halfway through the beat, if you want to make it, you know, that's two notes within the 1 crotchet beat. So that's what you call a quaver, because that's half of a crotchet beat in value. So I think you get that. I think it's pretty intuitive. I don't think I need to explain it. The one thing I will mention is you can change that the value of these lines by going up to this little arrow here, then go into snap, and then I'm actually on 3 steps now, so you can change that to 2 steps. So now, basically what that means is that these little cells within each column are now on an even number, so 2, 4, 6, 8, whereas before it was on an odd number, because these are divided into 3. So 3 is useful when you're doing like swing, right? Because if you do that, that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3. That's like an even kind of time signature. Whereas if you want something that's, I shouldn't say time signature, it's an even sort of non-swung sound. Again, I don't really know the terminology, but this is that's like swung because you got 3 instead of 4. Anyway, a lot of people, you know, this it's interesting, I noticed, actually, with a lot of tutorials that are meant to be swung, a lot of people miss out on this. They'll just do it into a non-swung beat, but if this is really worth knowing if transcribing swing music, or just any beat that's swung, But even when you do have these three, like the odd number of cells, it's still like, the halfway point is still the halfway point of the beat either way. Anyway, look, I won't ramble on about that. I think, as I said, it's pretty intuitive, but that's pretty much how it works. Okay, what now? Well, now that I've shown you how the piano roll works, I wanted to show you just a little bit about my workflow. So that is what I tend to do when I create piano tutorials. So what I generally do is I go to actually put the song that I'm using into my project. So for instance, say I'm transcribing TLC, like one of my own songs here. Then what I'll do, first of all, set this to the BPM of the song. So TLC from memory was 130 beats per minute. And you'll know that it's in time because you can put the metronome on, which is this button here, by the way, and then hit anywhere in the playlist or press this to change from the pattern to the playlist. And then when you hit play, then it will play. The metronome should be to the beat. So you might have to drag it around a little to make sure. Basically, you just want to make sure that every beat of this lands on a line. So this is probably 2, 3, 4. So you can see that that's in tempo now. The project is to the tempo of this song. If you had that at a different tempo, then that would be out of sync, and the metronome would be, out of sync to the song. So that's how you do it. You just want to make sure that the first beat of this, or any beat of this, is lined up with one of these lines. And then once you line up one of the beats of the lines, all of them should be, because it should be in tempo if you've set the tempo right. So I'm alone in a room full of people, bunch of people I've hung with before. Okay, so that's pretty easy to work out. So then what I do generally is I tend to put, unless it's a really easy thing to transcribe, I find the best way to do this, I'm just going to create a new pattern. Don't worry, you don't need to know how to do that, but if you do want to know, it's just that little toggle thing there. You can change to a new pattern, then go back to the previous one by going back down. Pattern 2, I'm just going to demonstrate starting a new pattern for you. I tend to actually transcribe the tutorial to this. So what I'll do, for instance, is that's the first note of the song, right? Or at least the instrumental, not the vocals, and that's like I believe a C sharp. Yeah, C sharp. So then what I do is go into this again, right click. Oops, sorry, not graph editor. Piano roll, and then, as you can see, when I hit play on the playlist here, I've got it selected on song. It's playing also from that point of the channel rack. So it's playing that from that part of the pattern, I should say, as well as that part of the playlist. So then that's really easy. Then all I know is like, okay, that part of it is a C sharp. So I put a C sharp here, and I think it's probably an octave lower. And you can see now I'm playing that at the same time as this, so it's super easy to transcribe. You can just instantly hit. By the way, I'm hitting spacebar, and I move the playhead to that point. So then every time it plays, it starts from that point, and then the next note. Then I can move it to where the next chord is. So you just hear it start from the chord that you're trying to work out, right? Which is probably... That's probably what I did. So it's G sharp, C sharp, E. And, yeah. I think that's probably extended. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it, right? And I just keep doing that for the entire song. And you want to stretch this out, by the way, to make sure that covers the entire song. Otherwise, it'll stop short. Yeah. By the way, I don't think I mentioned, but to put the pattern onto the playlist, you just want to click anywhere on the playlist like that, and that'll do it. You also want to make sure that here, like the pattern that you want to put on, which would usually be pattern 1, is selected, because if the song is selected as Rido TLC, that'll put that on there. But so you just want to make sure pattern 2 is selected. And yeah, that's how you do it. And also, another thing worth noting, if you click on here, that'll actually change the active channel to the song. So then when you start playing on the MIDI keyboard, it'll play that, which you don't want. So if you accidentally do that and you're not hearing sound, make sure that that's selected, that the plugin that you're using is selected. So then that'll be the active track. So yeah, once you've done that, what should we do now? Well, let's say you've created your entire song, right? You've got the left hand and the right hand. Now, the next thing you want to do is create a left hand and a right hand. So when you put this into the MIDI software, then it knows, what the left hand is and what the right hand is. The way you do that is you want to create 2 instances of play, because the piano visual software needs some information to know what the left hand is and what the right hand is. And so far, it's both in the same, track. We've just put it all there, so there's no way it's going to know that that's left hand and that's right hand, right? You need to tell it that in some way. So the way we do that is by cloning this. You don't actually have to clone it. You could just add another instance of it. But if you clone it, it's going to use all the same settings as this one. Then so that's probably what you're going to want to do. And to clone, as I just did, you right-click, go clone. And now we've got this instance. So what we want to then do is go into this instance. By the way, once you've actually put some notes into this track, then you don't actually have to go right-click and go piano roll anymore. You can just click on this and that'll open it. So what we want to do there is copy this, or actually cut this, and then put it into the left hand. So if this is the right hand, right, and this is the left hand. So everything in this one, we just want to be the right hand. Everything in that one, we just want to be the left hand, which means there's some left hand right now in this right hand. So we want to get rid of that and put it into the left hand. The way we do that, pretty easy. This arrow here, edit, cut. And then we right click there, piano roll, Control V, paste. Now it should paste it in place, but in case it doesn't, obviously you can drag it to where it was meant to be. Now we have this in the left hand and that in the right hand, and that's really what we want. And obviously this takes a lot longer if you've created a whole song worth of this, but yeah. Let's say, for instance, you have, you can't select all of them at once, right? You select that, but then there's also, I don't know, or what would you say? There's like there's a note there, and then there's another note here, and you want this one to be the right hand, but you want this one to be the left hand, but you also want that to be the left hand. So then when you selecting, you go Control, click, select that, but then you want to choose this one, but you don't want to select that one. There seems to be no way to select that one without also selecting this one. If that makes sense. Then what you do is hold down Shift, Control, and then that one, and then that won't let go of that selection, but it'll also select a new one. So that's how you do that, and then so that's basically what you do for the whole song. Yeah, so get rid of that. So let's say we've got our whole song. Just pretend this is the whole song. We've got the left hand and the right hand, and we've got it in 2 instances. So now what we want to think about first of all is the audio of the song. That is how it sounds, not necessarily the MIDI itself, but the actual audio that you play. That the person on YouTube, when they're watching your tutorial, the sound of the piano that they hear, what it sounds like. So the way you want to worry about that is by going into the plugin and then pressing this arrow and go to route to free mixer track, and then that'll take it to a free mixer track. Or you can use this number here. Once you've done it for the first one, I'd recommend doing the next one to the same one. So whatever that number is there, you go here and select it to there. And then once you've done that, it should, if you go to route to free mixer track, it should open that automatically. But in case you were doing the numbers, then you can press this button here and that'll open the mixer track. So what the mixer track is for adding effects, basically. You have to manually assign it to a mixer track, unlike other DAWs, which will do it automatically. But I just showed you how to do that then. So these should be somewhere on the mixer track. With, as you can see here, I put them on 2, and that corresponds here to mixer track 2. Then from what you can do there is add effects. So if you want a bit of reverb, you can go to, you just press the button here, go add reverb, you can add how much wet, I'm not going to explain how to use these plugins. You can add some, I don't know, EQ, you want to get rid of some of the highs, some of the mids or something, I don't know. Compression, other stuff. I'm not going to show you how to use all this. I don't think you need to, but you can add up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mixer thingamajigs. And you can actually add more through some advanced techniques using Fruity Wrapper, I think, but I'm not going to show you how to do that because I don't think it's necessary for this demonstration. What I do, I actually save my mixer track rack. So I already have it set up as tutorials. You can do that by just going right-clicking, File, Save Mixer Track State As, and then you can save whatever you've added. So you can just easily do that every time without having to re-add them all in. So as you can see, I got this thing. I can't remember why I added that. There was some reverb, some EQ, and some compression. Yeah. So that's basically just adding some effects to it. So if you want it to sound bigger and more spacious and have some reverb, whereas if I turn that off, put it to a different mix track, I don't know if you can hear that difference. Then it's a little bit more spacious. So that's kind of cool. All right. So now we've got that. Another thing, and this is kind of optional, something that I do though. Is add another instance, not for the MIDI, but purely for the sound. So I'll add another layer of piano just to give it a bit of a thicker sound. And then what I'll do is copy this, Control C, Control V, and do that also for the left hand, Control C, and Control V. Now I'm not using this for the MIDI. This is purely for the audio. So this is not serving any kind of informational, it's not serving any information for the piano visualizer software. It's purely for how it sounds. Because I want this to sound a little thicker than just what it has with the play textures. And I'm going to also set this to mixer track 2, so it's also covered by these effects. And then you'll hear, I'll turn that down a little bit. So you can see the difference. Just a little bit more low end, which I kind of like. Again, optional, but there's your audio. And that's really, I don't know, the only other thing you might want to do is turn it up a little bit because sometimes these piano sounds can be a little bit quiet. But yeah, that's pretty much the audio side of it. So once you've created your whole tutorial, you've gone through that whole rack, you've done all this, you don't have to do that, but you can if you want. You can even add like another instance for vocals. Of play here. Obviously, again, you don't want to put that in the same track or channel as the right hand or left hand. You want to have a separate track for that. So once again, create a separate track, put your vocals here, say there's a melody here, then there's your melody. I'm not going to do that for this purpose, but you want to do that. And then you also want to copy that into another plugin if you do have another plugin just to thicken up the sound. Then once you've done all that, then you can export. So you go File, Export, Wave, File, and export your wave file to, let's just call it Test2, because I did a test before, excuse me. Then you go Start. There, now that's exported that out. So make sure also when you export that you have pattern selected, otherwise it's going to export what's on the playlist, and if you've got audio on the playlist, you probably don't want that. I mean, you can export what's on the playlist if you remove the audio, but otherwise I just say go pattern. And then, as I said, File, Export, Wave. You can go MP3 too, Test2, just going to replace it, and then you can choose 16-bit, 24-bit, 32-bit. I just go 24, it's just the quality of it. Start, there you go, cool. Okay, now we've got the audio, so now we need the MIDI. So the MIDI, if you think of the audio as kind of the aesthetic, what you hear in the tutorial, the MIDI is the information that the visual software uses. So for the MIDI, you want to make sure, first of all, save this, because you do not want to lose what you've just done. If you've created some really nice audio with the effects and everything, you don't want to lose that. So make sure you save it. Obviously, you should be saving throughout, but especially before this step, save, and do not save after this step, otherwise you'll be left with no sound and just MIDI. But what you want to do now, after you've created this audio, is delete any extra tracks that aren't, that are only there for the audio's purpose. So for Contact, I just added it as an extra layer for the audio, so I'm going to delete that. I'm going to delete this track, Ezrado TLC, so that's just the audio, that'll get rid of that. And I'm going to delete the sampler. So now what I'm left with are just the two channels, the right hand and the left hand. And that's all you want for the MIDI, and the vocal channel if you have one, which I don't in this case. But you just want to end up basically with 2 or 3 channels, left hand, right hand, and optional vocals if you want to have that. Then what you do, again, save it, make sure you don't save it after this step, but before this step. Then once you save it, then go to Tools, Macros, and Prepare for MIDI Export. Now what this is going to do is convert that to a MIDI file, and it should be putting that onto channel 1 and 2. If it doesn't list channel 1 and 2, it's probably because you've got more tracks. You should have deleted those beforehand, but in case not, I don't know, there are just some tracks you didn't use, like the kick, hat, claps, snare, that it loads in the default other project, then these might be set to different channels. So you just want to make sure this is set to 1 and 2, because some programs can't read MIDI if it's set to, higher channels than 1, 2, and 3. So yeah, make sure 1, 2, and 3 are your left hand, right hand, and vocal channels. Now it's ready for export. So all we have to do, file, again, make sure pattern selected, not that, though you can use that actually. It's just that, for MIDI, I don't think it really matters. File, export, and then go MIDI. Test 2, then we're going to export the MIDI. Start. That should be super quick because it's just exporting the information. And voila, we have our MIDI track all done. Now I'm going to show you how to do the exact same thing, but with Cakewalk. Okay, so with Cakewalk, when you first open it, you should have something like this. You want to start with an empty project. Now, I'm not going to lie, I don't really use this program, so bear with me if I'm a bit slow with it, but I think I know enough to show you how to do what you need to do here. So with this one, when you want to add a track, by the way, I should say, I would recommend watching what I just showed with FL Studio before you watch this, because everything I'm going to do in this, I'm going to be referring back to what I did in FL Studio. So I'm not really going to explain things as conceptually, I'm just going to kind of show you what you need to know. Basically what I just showed you in FL, but then the version of it in Cakewalk. So with that being said, first thing you want to do, add track. So this is like you're adding your instrument. I'm going to use play. You can use Cakewalk's own instruments. I don't really know how to do that from here. Plug in, I don't know, there's like a general MIDI. Yeah, look, I don't know. Again, I just recommend using a third-party one here, and then open it, create. By the way, to open third-party plugins, the way you get Cakewalk to find it is by going to Edit, Preferences, and then you want to go down to VST settings and make sure that the .dll file of the third-party piano plugin that you downloaded is within one of these folders. And as I said before, I've left a list in the description of both paid and free piano plugins, so you can choose based on, whether you want to pay for it or not. But you just want to make sure that the .dll file of that thing that you downloaded is within one of these folders, and preferably the rest of whatever you downloaded is in one of these folders too. And then it should be able to, you can hit scan here and it'll scan for the plugins that you put in those folders, and it should find it. So then when you go to add, then you can, do it from there. Okay, cool. So we got our first instance of play. The way you access the piano roll here is going by view, and then you go piano roll view, and then that will open the piano roll for whatever channel is selected. This is where you draw your piano. Once again, it's a grid system. Each number represents, I think, 1 bar, just like FL Studio. You have 4 beats per bar, 4 crotchet beats, 2, 3, 4, and then you draw like this. Right click to delete, pretty much same as FL. Click anywhere on the grid, though you do actually have to drag a little bit for it to appear, and then that's how you do it. Usually there is audio input, by the way. I can't remember if I even added a piano here, but no, I didn't. For some reason, I'm having an issue with my audio driver, so it's not actually playing audio, but it should. If you do have any crackling with your audio, I would recommend going to Edit. I think it was Preferences. Then you want to go Driver or Playback and Recording under Audio. Sorry, then you don't want to change it to one of these. It should be by default selected to ASIO. But if it's not and you're getting crackling, then I would change it to. Sorry, if it is selected to ASIO and you're getting crackling, then I would recommend changing it to one of these. That should solve any crackling issues. Okay, so that's that. Yeah, this is pretty much the same as FL, more or less. Okay, they don't have the control settings. I'm not really 100% sure how to do everything in this. It appears when you like select something like that on the playhead, that's how you select notes. You can't use the shift to duplicate them. I actually don't know how you do that. So I'm going to link you to a tutorial on how to use the piano roll in Cakewalk, because I'm no expert on this, but that's the basics anyway. Just click anywhere on the grid, change it like that. Yeah. The only other thing I know that you can do is also go to Preferences, then you want to go to MIDI somewhere. Yeah, here we go, MIDI. And then this is where you find your MIDI device, your MIDI controller. So for some reason mine isn't being recognized, but you know, it should show up here. Okay, so I'm actually going to just link you to tutorials to show you how to do everything in Cakewalk, because as I said, I'm no expert. I haven't really used this much, but I'll link you to tutorials that show you how to do everything you need to do to create a piano tutorial. The only other thing I will mention here is if you, when you're exporting audio, you go export audio. When you're exporting MIDI, just standard MIDI file. You don't have to do any kind of prepare for macros like you do in FL Studio. So that's pretty much the gist of it. Also, duplicate. You can duplicate that. So you have, you know, your right hand and your left hand. Yeah, you can add effects by going to this little button here. There's your, if you want to add effects, you do that just by adding it like that. So I want to add that, and that's added that, and you can see your channel rack by, your effects rack by going to Views and Console View, which was, what was that? Console View, there it is. So that's everything that's on this effects rack. Yeah, and you can also add, can you add effects? Yeah, you can also add effects here. From there as well as from there. So that's, I mean, you can see them all there too. There's also got some sends here, but I'm not going to explain that. I think it's, yeah, I think I'm just going to link you to someone else's tutorial. Okay, so that's pretty much the gist of it. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you more about this, but I think because I haven't really used it much, it's just better that someone else explains it. But this is the program I recommend, though. Compared to all other free DAWs, at least, this to me seems like the best one, the most fully functional free DAW as far as I'm aware. But otherwise, highly recommend FL Studio if you're willing to pay. Okay, so with that being said, let's get on to the visual side of things. That's how you create your MIDIs and your audios. Cool. So now you want to actually create the visual side of things. So for that, there are two options, the free option and the paid option. Yeah, well, more than two options, I guess. A free, a paid one, and then a better paid one. I'll start with the free one this time. So the free one is, do I actually have it? Okay, I did come prepared. I was just thinking, since I reset my computer, I don't know if I reinstalled this, but I do. You want to use Synthesia for the free option, right? Then you want to go play a song. Did I actually have boring chords? Okay. You can find where your songs are located by going here and then going to songs, and then basically make sure one of these, wherever your songs are selected, is selected. You can add another folder there. Just make sure your MIDI files are within that. Doesn't matter if the WAV file is not, as long as the MIDI file you exported is in one of these folders. Great, cool. Then go play a song. Now I can select whichever song it is. So here we go, there's Aftermath. Now this is the free version. Oh, okay, the free version is stopping me from getting past a certain point. That's right, because you got to download an older version of Synthesia. because the trial version, it appears, is not going to let me go past a certain point. Honestly, unless you're really stingy, I just recommend paying for it because it's not that expensive. It's like, I think less than $50. I could be wrong, but anyway, I actually did buy it. I just can't remember my key, and I haven't really used it since because I don't use Synthesia anymore. But if you do use it, then once you have the older version that allows you to play through the whole thing, then you want to go continue. Then you open OBS, which is what I'm using now to record this whole tutorial, and you just do a simple display capture by going to File. I can't really show you this because I'm recording, but I'll add a link to a tutorial of how to use OBS. It's pretty straightforward. Then you go full screen, continue. Now it's recording. As you can see, it's recording there. Yeah, and you record your whole tutorial like that. Cool. So that's one way to get a video. More professional way is with Synthesia Video Creator. Please tell me I downloaded this. Okay, I do have the file, but I haven't installed it. Awkward. So the Video Creator is another thing you can do. I don't really need to show you because it's so straightforward. You can work it out how to use it yourself. But if you go, I'll add a link in the description. You just want to go there and download the Video Creator. And basically, you can change all the settings here in Synthesia to your liking. Really, the only thing I'll change is that maybe, I don't think you can change colors. But yeah, you can... oh, well, you can change between the colors they give you, I think. So once you change all the settings in here, then when you go to the Video Creator, it'll use whatever settings you've chosen here in the Video Creator. And then you just export a video out of that. That'll save it as a WebM, I think was one of the options. It's really annoying. It doesn't give you the option to export as an MP4. So to change that, then you can use... Did I download this? Please tell me. Okay, good. That's it. Then you can use any video converter. This is a great free video converter. Once you've converted the file out of Synthesia Video Creator, then you put it in here, convert it to an MP4. Make sure that your settings are set, original and high, because I think it defaults something lower than that. And everything there's good. Yeah, just make sure it's not exporting to anything too low. Then that'll export out a video to whatever folder this is set to. Which I believe for me was like in documents. No, it was it videos? No, it was my C drive videos. Yeah, here we go. So that's where it exports for me. I think that's the default videos, any video converter, MP4. And yeah, there you go. That's how you do that. So that's Synthesia. Sorry, that was super brief, but it's pretty easy to use. I don't think I need to really go through it with you. The one I use now, and this is the paid one. I should mention too, with the Video Creator, I'm pretty sure you need a paid version of Synthesia to use that. But yeah, it's, again, Synthesia is pretty cheap. So, if you're real Scrooge, then you can just use OBS to record the screen of Synthesia with the older version of Synthesia. But yeah, if you're going to use Synthesia, at least get the Video Creator, I'd say. But what I use now is something I think is a lot sexier, which is something that's created by Lyric Wolf called Embers. You may know Lyric Wolf. He's a guy who creates piano tutorials on YouTube. He created this bit of software called Embers. Now, I do hope that OBS is not going to stop recording for this because this is a full screen program. Let me just make sure. Okay, yeah, cool, it is. So yeah, with this, then you can choose your MIDI file from wherever you save your MIDI files. Let's say I've got Flamingosa Staymaker, which, spoiler, is an upcoming tutorial, I think. Oh, maybe I've already uploaded, depending on when I upload this, I suppose. Then you can actually design your own right, left hand. If you go into designer mode, you can, I've got my left hand here, but you can change the color, the tint, the glow, edge. I'll go into one that I'm happy to actually change. Here you can change the, tint, glow like that. You can see edges, refraction, go into the keys, change the glow there. No, that's doing much. Edge, refraction, and embers, which is kind of the real fun thing, is turning on these little effects that you see on the notes coming out there. You can really change the intensity of them, the life of them. This is the kind of thing that before you could only really do in After Effects, but now there's a whole program dedicated to this. I really love it. So this is what I use now. So that's where you design it. Going back to the main menu. Then obviously, yeah, if you have two MIDI channels which were created, this is where you select the right, left and the right. For me, I had the right first and then the left, I believe. So I create it like that. I've already got my little designs I've created that you can save once you've created them in design mode. Change the speed of it. I tend to go 12. I think 14 is a little fast. You can choose a background. So, what do we got? I think I did have a background for Flamingo, so this, maybe I just call it Daymaker. Okay, I can't find it, whatever. You can add a background, so let's just pretend it's the Ended with the Night background that I used in my Ended with the Night tutorial. Then you can change the gradient and guide for before the tutorial starts and after it starts, so that is when the first note falls down. I've already got it set, so I'm not going to change it. There you go, there's before it starts, and then it fades and blurs when it starts. Cool. And then, this is the real icing on the cake, then you just render from this program too. There's no extra bit of software you need to use. You just go hit there, start render. So this is my go-to software now. This is the one I highly recommend. The only downside is if you want to use this for free, which you can, you do have to put up with a watermark. So yeah, I'll give you a link in the description where you can download this, but if you want the free version, then you have to put up with the watermark. If you want to get rid of the watermark, you have to become a Luminary supporter of this software on Patreon. If I go to Patreon now, I will be able to find, I believe, when is it actually? I'll just search for it. Embers, here it is. Yeah, you just go here. I've already got a membership. As you can see, I'm a Luminary. $20 per month, US dollars. And that'll get you the version of it without the software, but without the watermark. But if you really want it without, if you really want to use it for free, you can use it with the watermark. So great. There we have it. That's not entirely the end. That we've got our videos now. We've made, a visualizer either from Synthesia or from Embers, but there's still one thing we got to do before we are finished with this piano tutorial. And that is actually putting the audio, like the nice sleek audio that we created in FL Studio or Cakewalk, with the visualizer. And for that I'm using Premiere. You can use whatever video editing software you like, but I use Premiere. Obviously this is paid software. I didn't really list a specific bit of video software in the beginning. This is kind of on you. I think this is a simple enough thing to do for me to not have to do a massive tutorial on this, but I'll show you what my workflow is at least. So I have my own project pre-created, so I don't have to, create it every time. It's sort of a template of everything I want to do with my piano tutorials. I'm going to just enlarge that. And as you can see here, I've got my little intro. You don't need to see that because that's kind of specific to me, but and a little kind of film grain effect opens up. I got the title there, and there we go. And then, so really the only thing you want to worry about, because everything else is to taste, but this is the kind of essential thing, is just making sure that the audio of your tutorial is lined up with the video tutorial. So, drag both of the audio and the video tutorial into the project and make sure that the time the first note starts is also the time where the first bit of your audio starts, and then it should be in sync, as you can see. And this is my tutorial for Flamingos's Daymaker. As you can see, that was the background I was looking for. Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of cool. And then, I had a little thing at the end as well. Yeah, so that's the gist of it. Then you go File, Export, Media. Look, I'm not showing you a tutorial for Premiere, but that's what you do. So that's it. And then you have your own, like, find the piano tutorials. Flamingosis. Ready for upload on YouTube. Nice. Really sleek looking, really love it. Cool, so that's it. Thank you for watching to the end. I know this was way longer than I intended it to be, but I wanted to cover all my bases. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I forgot to cover. No, I think that's it. You got your MIDI file, you got your audio file, you got your video file. Like that's pretty much everything you want. So yeah, I hope this wasn't too confusing. I hope I didn't go too fast. Obviously, rewatch anything. I would advise you to take this really slowly and, make sure, that you're really understanding everything I'm doing. Just rewatching, everything that I do. I think there's not really anything I missed out of, but I realized that this was quite impromptu, so I wasn't really, going super slow or anything like that. Yeah, rewatch as many times as you need to. Yeah, I hope this helps. This is kind of how to make a piano tutorial in 2021 as I'm recording this. And if I don't update this by 2022, then it will be how to create a piano tutorial in 2022, because I doubt much will have changed by then, but we'll see. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you again in my next video. But until then, ciao.